Hello and welcome to another webinar in our Take It to the Pitch series of Ambassadors Football Great Britain. I spent an hour in the company of Jon Warnock and Andy Hood. Both work with football and ministry in their local communities. Andy in inner city London with Inspire Church, which reaches out through informal football activities on a weekly basis through his local church in a local sports area. And Jon Warnock, who works in Bury St Edmunds with Sporting 87 FC, a club that's in the FA League structure, very well run with various teams from under 7s and 8s through to adult teams. We hope that you'll enjoy this hour with them, and if you want to like or subscribe to our channel, please do so. If you want any more information about football and especially community football outreach and training that we provide from Ambassadors Football, please do send us an email and the details are below.
So it's great to be part of this, and I have to say from the outset, I've worked with ambassadors on various different projects, and I am amazed at the work that they do, not only in this country but worldwide. And I think the training and some of the guys they've got involved with them are absolutely top notch, and I have totally learned so much from them, and it's great to work with them again on this. Let me just share my screen, and then we'll go from there. That's not my screen that I wanted to share with you, but let's just get this. Right, okay, so from the beginning. Right, so what we're going to do is, I'm just going to go for a small presentation, and then please feel free to ask questions. If you think I lisp slightly, it's because I've lost my front tooth. So every now and again on the webinar, you'll see that my front tooth is missing. So it doesn't mean my voice sounds slightly strange, but that happened a few weeks ago. Right, so I'm Jonathan Warnock. For those of you who don't know me, I have worked for Sporting 87 now, been first team manager for over 25 years. I have held a UEFA B licensed coach. I've been held that qualification for over 20 years. I completed my A license a few years ago, but I didn't actually do the final assessment, which I need to put some work in and do that at some point. Previously to that, I was academy manager of a non-league academy for 7 years. I've also worked for the local FA as a coach mentor. Currently, I'm involved with Sporting 87. As I said, I've done that full time for about 17 years, although I've actually been first team manager for over 25 years. Today, Sporting 87 Football Club has got 3 adult sides, open age teams, but then we've got 40 youth teams, from under 7s to under 18s. Youth-wise, we've got over 600 kids signed on with us. One of those youth teams is an under 18 team that plays in the local sort of step 6 league. Midweek is the youth league, Eastern Counties Youth League, which we hire a ground and we play our under 18 midweek games. So that's a decent level, and hopefully those boys then feed into the first team. So adult wise, we've got first, reserves, and a third team. We've got some under 18 teams that play on a Saturday morning. All the youth teams play on a Saturday morning in the league, apart from the Thurlow Nunn team. At some age groups, we've got more than one team. Obviously, at some age groups, we've got 5 or 6 teams, depending on how many coaches and how many players we've got. Alongside the teams, we've got a community department that does TOPS football. We run goalkeeper sessions during the week. We've got walking football sessions for a whole variety of ages and ability. We run a futsal league. We also run ladies football. We run a schools program. We go into schools and do PE lessons and lunchtime clubs, after school clubs, breakfast clubs, that sort of thing. So the top photograph is just some of our works with the tops. So we've got about 80 kids registered between the age of 3 and 7 that don't play in teams. But they play in festivals, but they're not registered because to play in FA competitions, you have to be, it starts at under 8s. Obviously, you can have under 7s, but lower that, and then that age group, they're not in regular leagues. So we put on festivals for them each week up at the ground, and then we go to other clubs as well. So there's other stuff other than the teams that we run on a Saturday. So our mission statement is there. It's a Christian football club dedicated to playing football to the highest possible standard in terms of ability and good conduct, but it's also committed Christian growth within all its members. Now that's an important part of our mission statement. So how does that work? And my aim in the next just 5 or 10 minutes, just to explain and give you 1 or 2 examples of how that works. And I'm more than happy to unpack that a bit further. What I've done is I've just put this into different sections and just explain how the Christian growth works within different sections of the club, depending on how you access the club. So adult players, if you're in the first team or under 18s, you every year get a personal meeting with me, at least one, which is a development meeting. I'll come back onto that in a minute because that's key to the way we support people. We also have a plan for the year. So whilst there are things that goes on each week, we also hold various outreach events. So we have Christians in Sport quiz nights. We also have carol services. We have awards dinners. So the carol service will always get a Christian footballer in to give a testimony and talk about football at Christmas. At the awards dinners, we always have, whether it's the youth or the adult, we always have a Christian footballer come and give their testimony. So the adult awards dinners, we get about 130 people to. It's a proper sit-down, 3-course meal. And it's a very formal occasion, but we also get FA officials and various other people come to that event. Youth, it's all about creating that environment to progress people into the adult section of the club. The difference between our youth team and a lot of the youth teams locally is we do have a plan for their football development and we do care about them. But the environment is different. I mean, a lot of kids football, the environment, unfortunately, isn't positive, and you often hear coaches on the side effing and jeffing. So the environment that we create is totally different. I'll come on to that a bit more about some of the other things that go around the youth section. Everybody who signs on the youth section, the whole sign-on process is all about introducing us to the Christian Football Club and about our values and about how we expect and what we're trying to achieve. So the adult players, we work on this basis here. This is just one that I've taken. So every year I will sit down for about, this year it was done on Zoom, but we have a sit down with a player for about an hour where we go through their technical ability, their psychological, their physical development, and their social development. And then in the middle, we talk about their spiritual development. So people may say that they think they're fit, and we talk about their physical development, and then we talk to them about their bleeps test scores or their fitness scores throughout the year that we keep. So this week, we've just had all the first team players in for all their fitness testing. And so their results are going out by email this afternoon because they've been tested this week and weighed and everything else. And I've got scores for them in the past few years, so they can compare, and then they can compare against each other. And then next week, we're setting them targets for those tests to improve before this year's slightly different because obviously we don't really know when we're going to be starting again. So we're trying to plan pre-season and make sure it's we don't do too much too early, basically. But we also talk about people's social development. Spiritual development depends on the person. So if they're a Christian, I would talk to them about their um, their church involvement and make sure that that's still going strong. If they're not, if I don't know that they've got a home church, I would the 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 meetings I plan are always take place the week after the end of the season, the awards evening, and most years all but one or two of the players will come to the dinner. So one of the first questions is, you heard this footballer or you heard this person at the awards dinner. What did you think? What did you think about what they'd said? And often the lads will open up. The other thing about this is I've got a relationship with these lads, so I know what's going on in their lives. And often they will have seen me during the season or would have come to me with all sorts of things. So that development side is already part of a conversation that's been going on. Every home game, we have a program that's printed. That gets printed full colour, 20 pages, and that gets printed. We get about 200 printed, and we give those out. It always includes a Christian article from a Christian footballer. When I say a Christian article, it's always a football-related article. It's always from a Christian. And also, we have a club chaplain, and every week he writes an article, and that goes in the programme as well. On top of the club chaplain, we have a thing called footy pastors. They're around the ground on Saturday morning. So on a Saturday morning, you could get 20 games going on because we start at 9 o'clock. Then the next lot of games start at 10:30. And then the adult games start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But in the morning, you'll get 400 or 500 people at the ground over the course of the morning. And the club, the footy pastors just walk round and talk to parents and talk to people. And you'd be amazed at how many of those pick up all sorts of things. So they get chatting to parents. And it's about creating a culture. So every Monday, we have a meeting, and all the welfare issues from the weekend get brought up. So you'll find that, you find out about parents that have maybe going through problems in their marriage. It may be parents, or it may be grandparents who have passed away. And so the club will then contact them, send flowers, go round, talk to them. And sometimes, because of the culture we've created, people actually phone up. We've got a family at the moment they're splitting up, and the mother has actually phoned us up to see if we can take the lad out for a coffee and chat to him. He's 16, but she wants some support from the chaplain as well. So she's asked. She's got no church background whatsoever, but she's asked if what can we do to help her. So it's about creating a culture, and that takes a number of years, but it does pay off. Opposition. I mean, I think the opposition are probably the hardest group to have a Christian witness for. However, if you've been there for years and years and years and years, and you keep creating that environment, you'd be amazed. So there's a manager who, well, I knew him as a player, a lad. His brother, unfortunately, had some mental health issues, so he contacted me. No church background whatsoever, and he contacted me because they wanted some support, and so I met up with him and things like that. But all the time, you're just looking for ways to just support people. The programme is a way of engaging with the opposition. We always give the programmes to the opposition. We give that to the referee. We give that to anybody, any of the supporters, and you'd be amazed at how many people read it and also email in or phone in and want other copies of programmes. The other thing is we we make sure that we're social. So after the game, adult players stop and have a meal or have food and a drink with the opposition. We always put food and drink on for the opposition afterwards, and that's the important part of it. Going back to the plan, you'll see there's a curry picture there. Once a month, we run. It's a Bible study, but it's not called a Bible study. We called it Life Questions. In a curry house, what we do is we have a curry, and then afterwards we look at a subject. And what we do is we read a passage of scripture. All the verses are taken out. They wouldn't know it as a passage of scripture, but it's exactly the same text. And then there's a whole load of questions that relate to that question on a specific subject. So we'll look at a parable, we'll look at and each month we normally get about anything between 20 and 30 people come to that. And that is players, spectators, coaches, and they're one-offs. They're not. You don't have to do it as part of the series. You can just go along to one of them. We've done a deal with the curry shop on a Monday night, so we pay 13 quid and you get loads of food and that. And it's a great social, but you'd be amazed at how many people come along. And we've got a ladies' table as well, and that works really, really well. And we've had people go on to alpha courses as a result of that. So that's another thing. Yeah, again, the programs are important for FA officials when they come and visit us at the ground, which they do. It's important for the league officials. It's important for for referees. We give those out. We make sure that referees are looked after. We also invite them to our annual awards events. And we've had referees that have contacted us and asked for prayer. But it's also going the extra mile and doing things. So if you know a referee and you've known him for years, and all of a sudden there've been referees that have become ill or had cancer or gone into hospital, we write them a letter and we've even gone and visited them. And then that creates a culture that they know that you care about them, and we've had them come to our Christmas carol services. We've had them come to all sorts of things. It's all about making them feel part of the community. I mean, that's a very quick, rapid overview. I'm sure there might be some questions that you want.
Yeah. Thanks.
Does that help, Martin?
Thanks, John. No, that's great. And I've got a few questions that have just been prompted by what you've said. And yeah, if you can write anything in the chat if you want to know more. But one thing, just to unpack this, Sporting 87 began in 1987, correct?
Yes.
How many football teams did you have then?
We had one team, and they had one team for a number of years.
And then something about 2004. Is that when you got involved full time, maybe?
Yeah, I started working at the end of 2004, and at that stage we had 2 adult teams and sort of 2 youth teams.
So 17 years. I'm good at maths. 17 years, 2 adult teams, 2 youth teams. So some of us, just to encourage you, if you've been running a team and it's only been going for 10 years, hang in there. No, I think sometimes we can see. And I think Sporting 87 is an amazing setup and tremendous now. How many teams and players would you have on the books now, a rough estimate?
Well, we've got 4. I think we've registered 40. I think there's 46 teams this year with the FA, and players registered with the FA will be over. It was over 700 we registered.
Yeah, right.
We've got more players than that because we don't register all the tots from 3 to whatever. Obviously, all the walking footballers, all the ladies footballers who are not playing, and also the futsal footballers, they're not registered with the FA. So there's probably another couple of hundred people or 150 that are not registered.
Yeah. I mean, so that's tremendous. It's like the numbers are amazing, but they can be a bit overwhelming sometimes. But I think what you've done is take the skill set that you've got, which is good. And one thing you've always reminded me of is that you've said you want to be a credible football team, which is fair enough, and a credible Christian witness. And I think that's a challenge. And I think for all of us involved in Christian sports ministry, we have to work within the boundaries that we've got with our skill set, but also realize we could bring people in that can benefit that club that we're part of. It might be that you can bring in somebody into the club that's got some skills in the footballing area. But we don't all have to be at that level. And we're going to talk to Andy in a bit about what he's doing in London as well. But what I like is that you've chosen this route and you want to be a credible football team and a credible Christian witness, but you haven't lost that Christian witness element. And the creating a culture is something that I really took out of what you were saying. And I want to encourage us all that from the outset, even in those 17 years, you're 2 adult teams, 2 youth teams, you think, oh, not a lot really, but actually that's keeps enough people busy. But you've tried to keep that culture of saying what's at the heart of our club, and that is a really great thing to encourage. Can you just unpack a little bit this? How many volunteers do you have?
Just under 100 volunteers.
Wow. Okay.
So that could be coaches. It could be people that are part of our welfare team. It could be people that serve in the tea bar. It could be people that serve on the car park, helping with that. It could be people that come into the office to support all the administration that goes on. It could be, so it but they're all important part. The people that do the teas and the food on a Saturday afternoon. The players certainly the first team players would make sure that, and all the adult players would make sure they go and make them part of the club, and so they come to the awards dinners and they're celebrated.
So we've had a question actually from Rich. Thank you. To say, how do you encourage, how do you maintain keeping that volunteer workforce going? Is it part of your management structure to say we've got a volunteer manager or something else, or?
That I would say that is one of the most challenging things, because and so I mean, churches in general find it difficult to get people to volunteer. Now I do have some views on that, which I probably won't share here, but churches do find it difficult to get volunteers. So if you then find a Christian organisation, you're then competing sometimes with your own church to get a volunteer. And I'll be upfront here, and all the church I'm involved in know that I feel this way. It frustrates the heck out of me that some churches will encourage somebody to run a Sunday school, that you ask them to run a Saturday team or a team, and they think that the Sunday school has got more value. Now, I understand that has an important value, but I wish they'd see the value of investing in people in other areas. And obviously church leaders are going to want, people to use those things in their church. But my experience is that actually, if churches get involved in the community, if as Christians we're prepared to get our hands dirty, people are actually searching for spiritual answers. They do want engagement. The trouble is they're not looking at churches, because for too long churches have been totally irrelevant in their lives.
We've had another question, but also just to follow up on that, you have volunteers that are going to church. You've got some that are probably even leaders in their churches, or have responsibilities in church. And then you've got some people that aren't at church and are not yet, and on a journey, even spiritually. So how does that work? And it follows up a little bit to say, from Mark's question, thanks Mark, to say, what's the most significant thing you've put in place to build the Christian culture in the club? Because obviously non-Christian, if we like to say, people can come into the club and want to be part of it, but how do they not dilute that culture?
Well, it depends on. So I think, I mean, the book, I don't know who wrote it. I read it, but the sort of belong, believe, behave sort of philosophy. We say, come and belong to us. We hope by belonging to us, you will start believing. And ultimately, once you believe, you will then start behaving in a way, hopefully. However, there is an argument that says a lot of Christian organisations and churches sometimes say, in order to be part of us, you've got to behave this way. You've got to believe this thing, and then we'll eventually let you belong. Well, that people actually do want to belong, and we have to work people on a journey, and it takes years. I mean, I can honestly, there are photographs around the wall. I can tell you examples of people that have come into the club. We've got videos of baptism testimonies that come into the club. They don't have a Christian background, but they actually are interested in faith. They're interested in a serious discussion. I mean, I can tell you a story now. I can see Dan Owen on this. We had a lad that came to us about 6 years ago as to the club. Really good footballer, really great lad. He's not a Christian. He wouldn't claim that he came from a Christian background or anything, but he was intrigued by the club. Now he's had some challenges. We've supported him as a person, and Dan has helped him massively. He's been on Alpha courses, and he loves the club. He's now going along to church, but that's taken about 7 or 8 years. It takes time. You can't, there are some people that God works in their lives, and it changes them overnight. But you've got to be in this for the long haul, and it's taken 17 years to get here where we are. Well, it's actually taken 30 years because we're building on all of that stuff that's happened. And it's just a continuous faithful dedication and hard work. Does that answer the question? I forget what the question was.
No, I think, well, whatever the question was, that was a great answer. But one of the things that I just wanted to highlight as well, and to remind people, if you're involved in football and ministry, the FA have some tremendous resources out there, and they've just introduced a new award, which is free actually to take part in, called the Playmaker Award. If you Google that through your local FA, it's an online course specifically to help foundation phase play and coaching. So that's anybody up to the age of 11, if you're a coach of those players. And the idea is that it's an entry-level course to get used to the idea of organising football and football coaching. It can be for people that haven't got a football background, but also for people that are a little bit nervous about coaching. But they have a pathway of coaching. In Britain, anyway, we would highly recommend that people get involved with the FA if you're going to be involved with coaching of football. And so that's why in Ambassadors, sometimes when we give our training, we look at some aspects of football and coaching, but we want to focus on this ministry aspect and how we can develop community and a culture. One thing that Jon had there with his interviews was the 4-corner model with an extra bit in the middle that we've included in our training as well in Ambassadors. But the 4-corner model of the FA involves every player's value around physical, psychological, social, and skills, tactical corners. So that means that every player has those 4 aspects. Now we've introduced, and Sporting 87 have as well, the spiritual aspect as well, a 5th aspect. But that means we'll know it for any player. That, just to unpack it for those that don't know, if you're weak in the social corner, you might not get on very well with your teammates. So you've got to develop that through coaching. If you're not very strong psychologically, when you go 2-0 down and there's only 15 minutes to go, you might be flaky and not do very well. If you're not very good in the tactical corner or the technical corner, you might be past the ball and you might not even be able to control it. And if you're not very physical and developing in that physical corner, you might not last 90 minutes or extra time. And so you're supposed to develop all of those aspects of players, with the FA pointing out that from all under 11 players around the country, only 1 in 57,000, according to their statistics, makes it to become a professional player. So they tell coaches in their education, don't think that you're going to develop the next great professional player. Develop people and develop them as people and members of society, and you'll do a good job. Rob's asked a question, which will be the final one for this section, and then we'll go to Andy to hear a bit more about more grassroots and less formal aspects of coaching and outreach. But it's a really good question. As you've talked about the different ways in which you introduce the Christian faith into the club, how do you cope, especially with the backgrounds that we're all coming from in Britain today? How do you introduce or recognize other faiths? How do you get them? Do you recognize that, and how do they feel included? How have you dealt with that over the years?
Can I just pick up on the thing first and then come into that? Do you mind? So
Sure.
We talked about that four corners model. I would argue as well, to develop what Martin said, that the spiritual development will impact on all those four corners. So if we develop, sport has a great way of finding our flaws. So if you're a person that's lazy, sport will find that. If you're a person that has got social challenges, sport will pull those out. But equally, as a Christian, surely I believe that having a correct relationship with God, really working on you as a person, and God working in your life, will impact your interactions with other people. If it doesn't, there's something wrong, which will actually impact the way you think psychologically, which will actually impact on you physically, and it will certainly impact on all of those areas. Now, going to the question regarding other faiths and the culture we're living in, Bury St Edmunds, and I look at, is a very very rural area. It's actually unusual even within towns. It's very white middle class. So if you went to Ipswich, there is a big Afro-Caribbean population and much more multicultural. If you went to Cambridge, it's much more multicultural because I guess of the university. If you go to Thetford, which is 15 miles away, there's a big Portuguese community. But Bury historically has been very white. It has changed over the last 15 years, but I don't think we encounter some of the more multicultural challenges that other towns and regions have. However, we are upfront about the fact that we're a Christian football club. So people don't join us under a false pretense. So we're not pretending to be a football club and then all of a sudden we jump them with Christianity because we've sort of hooked them under some false pretense. If they're a youth player, up front, all the stuff that comes in goes through about our Christian beliefs and values. If they're an adult player, before we sign them on, I will sit down with them and talk to them about where they're going to fit in and talk to them about the club. And also, it's quite funny actually. In some ways, our Christian reputation is stronger outside than it is, dare I even say, inside. Like a lot of people have an assumption that everybody involved in the club is Christian, because but I mean, I'd probably only have, on the stats, only about a third of the people involved in the club would say that they were a Christian. But people who are not involved in the club have a perception about the club, which is because. So, does that sort of?
No, that's great. I think it is important. Similar to stuff like I think Messy Church or the Alpha Course. I think it's important within our football ministry to say this is who we are. This is where we head. Come on board. and people appreciate that. I think even more in the modern age, you know, people appreciate the fact that they've got the chance to see something. Oh, this is where you stand about these issues or that issues. You can take it or leave it. That's, you know, in some ways that's good.
So I mean, a new player turned up to fitness training from another club this week. He's played against us before, and he contacted us because he wants to leave. I identified him as a good player from another team, and he came along to training. And I had a phone call with him before he came. I just told him everything about the club. I said, look, come along. If you enjoy it, I'm more than happy to sign you for it. I'd be delighted if you signed for it. If you don't, if it's not for you, I'll introduce you to another club and you can find a club. But most people that come to us who don't have a church background come to us and absolutely love it.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, John. And I'd like us to move on and just listen to Andy for the rest of the time, and there can be more questions as they come as well. But different emphasis in lots of ways. Some things are very similar, same Christian faith, same Christian background. But yeah, Andy, just share a little bit about what you're doing on a weekly basis through what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks very much, Martin. So yeah, very much, as you said, the kind of other end of the spectrum in some sense. So my name's Andy. I'm the children, youth and families worker for a central London church called Inspire Church. And one of the things we've done since we kind of started a new church about 7 years ago is run football clubs for children and young people in the local area. So what Martin's asked me to talk about, let me just quickly share my screen. So it's called Inspire Football, and I'm just going to quickly talk about how we got started, what we do each week, give a sense of like how in some sense how easy I think it is to do what we do on one level, and then finally to kind of think a little bit about routes to gospel fruit. So in terms of how we got started, let me stop the share for a minute just so I can see you guys. Basically, there was a guy called Santosh who was volunteering in the local primary school and helping out in their lunch times running football. And so he built a relationship with a few of those keen footballers in the kind of upper half of primary school, so kind of 7 to 11-year-olds, and then got permission to circulate some flyers in the primary school saying, you know, here on this council pitch, literally kind of a stone's throw from the primary school, we're going to be running a football club on Sunday mornings. And so that was quite a few years ago. So you had him with maybe one other leader each week. And to start with, it was very small, 3 or 4 kids coming along. And I guess in some sense, I find it encouraging to think, hopefully it's encouraging to say that I'm not here to tell you a story about explosion in numbers. So we're here, 6 years after that started, and we're currently up to kind of 15 or 20 kids coming on a Sunday, 2 groups, so kind of 7 to 10s and 11 to 14s. And it really is kind of very, very grassroots. It's not a brilliant pitch. Let me show you a photo of one of our pitches. Here we are. So it's just a free council pitch. So here's one of the pitches we use. There they are on the kind of cage, and then here's the other pitch we use. So another, again, a cage you can see kind of right outside in the state. So in terms of where, and people have come to it just through word of mouth, through siblings, and we've kind of built a little bit of relationship with the local estate. So it really is people kind of coming very locally. So probably, you know, a catchment area of a mile square at most in terms of where people are coming from, really. And then, so in terms of what we do week by week is you've got two leaders on each of the 2 pitches, and between them the two leaders are going to run. Let me just quickly show you here. So what we do each week, we're going to run a 3-part weekly session. So we do games and drills for the first 25 or so minutes of the session. Then we do Coach's Corner. I'll explain more about that in a minute. And then run matches. So there's no we're not a registered team. We're not playing in a league. In some sense, it's just a weekly kind of community football session for families. So the games and drills, actually, that's one of the parts where we draw very heavily on ambassadors' resources, and they've been a key part of training our volunteers to do that well. So we genuinely want children to get better at football. The context we're working in is one where, like, we're largely working with kids who aren't the kind of kids who want to play in a serious club. I guess, you know, we don't want the time and commitment that playing for a registered team like Sporting 87. And so we're working with a very wide range of ability, and our commitment is to helping people develop from wherever they're starting from, which can be a very low level. And then Coach's Corner, that basically is a chance for people to grab a drink, have a snack, and then we have a 2 to 4 minute gospel presentation, which is always linked to football. So a classic would be, you're thinking about the best. What's the best skill what's the best comeback you've ever been part of on a football pitch? What's the best comeback you've ever seen? And then you think about, that would be a great way to lead into the resurrection as the greatest comeback that the world has ever seen. So short gospel presentation, and then matches, kind of small side games for the rest of the time. I guess one of the things I'm really passionate about is I genuinely believe that there are very few churches out there who couldn't do this. There really are very few churches out there who couldn't do this if the desire was there. So one thing to say is I'm now an employee of the church, but it was volunteer led for a number of years, and it's one of many things I do. So I reckon I probably spend 1 to 2 hours a week outside of the session. So outside of arriving at 9, having packed up by 10:45, I reckon I spend an hour or two a week just managing volunteers, preparing things, making sure that the kit's all sorted. So it really is not that demanding. So we've currently got a team of 12 volunteers, 12 or so volunteers. So you've got four volunteers helping out every week. So people are only on 1 in every 3 weeks. So we're not even asking people to get up every week to run football before our service. It's one in every 3 weeks. And then what we're trying to do is then train those volunteers to be, it's a very flat structure. So all the volunteers are asked to be able to coach sessions. So that's why we get them along to training ambassadors have run for us. That's why we have a kind of common playbook. So you're putting together a session from a set of drills that everyone knows is there. And we're training everyone to be able to share their faith and share something of the Christian faith in that kind of applied to football setting. And so basically, particularly because we use council pitches, which we are able to use for free on the basis that we're providing a service to the local community, it's unbelievably cheap to run. So I think it costs about 100 quid a year, all in, to run the ministry. So I think what I'd love to kind of say is, I genuinely think, in terms of outreach to children and young people, you need 2 people and a football, and those 2 people don't even need to be great at football. Like I'm a rugby player by background. I watch football and I love football and enjoy football, but I'm not very good at football. I've learned to coach to a level where 7 to 11-year-olds who aren't brilliant feel like they can learn something from me, and that's probably about the limit of where I'm at. And so, but I think the reality is that something that sounds in some sense as small and as limited in some ways as what we do, God has been really kind, and we've seen real gospel fruit from it. So just three areas we've seen fruit in are families getting saved, holiday club, and then youth work. So let me just give you one story. So there's a lad, let's call him Tim, who came along basically to the first ever session in 2014, started coming along to our church. So basically just got to know people. So no dad at home at that point. Got to know people, got to relate to the volunteers. 3 years later, so he was about 8 when he started, about 11 or something. He started coming along sometimes to our service, our church service, so he could be part of the kids' work there. The main attraction was just he knew that the same people would be around and there'd be a football he could kick around with an adult. 2 years after that, he said to me, I think this stuff might be true. I think I might want to get baptized. And we baptized him in September 2018. His mum was baptized the year later through the connection we built with that family. So that's one thing, just simple people just hearing the gospel week in, week out for years in a context where someone loves them and really cares about them and keeps being there for them. And then the second thing is we built a kind of a holiday club, sadly not this summer, but we started in 2014 with just 10 boys from the regular football came along. And last summer, we had 80 6 to 11-year-olds. That's half on a football stream and half on a creative stream, 20 teenage apprentices. And of that, I reckon 50 or so of those children and young people came with their families to our celebration service on the Sunday. So kind of like an awards ceremony as part of the service, where we hand out our awards from the week. Martin, are you happy? We got time for me to just show a video of that, just to show people kind of what that's like?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Yes. I'm
So
just about to, in the next 10 minutes, just do a poll, which is something new as well. We're all trying something new, but I'll just do it. And I've got another question, but let's see the video if we can. That'd be great.
So let me just see. Hopefully this will work. Oh, sorry, the internet's not quite up to it. It looks like.
We can possibly, because of the streaming, we can maybe send the link round to people to be able to
sorry,
catch
okay, let's see if it. Great, so that's probably enough to give you a sense of what it's like. So that was our holiday club last summer, and that's come out of football, and we've been really encouraged to see a number of families come along to church regularly, who kind of been reached through the holiday club. And the final way that we've seen kind of this work bear fruit is through a youth club. So when we started football, it was for 7 to 10-year-olds, but obviously kids get older, and actually, so we've now got a kind of our church youth group, which I help to lead. It's got about 20 young people, most of whom aren't from a church background, and most of whom are footballers and their mates. So genuinely, there's an argument that if you said to me, as if a church leader came to me and said, how can I reach young people in my local area? I would probably say, start a football club for 7 to 10-year-olds and wait a few years. That genuinely might be one of my best strategies for getting youth work going, because you build relationships at an age where they're not going to come, and they get used to a certain, like, in terms of environment, they know, so Inspire Football, one rule is respect. That's always been the rule. They've known that since they were 7. So when they come into a youth club environment, they're ready to listen. They're used to hearing Coach's Corner. They're used to engaging with the Christian faith as part of what it is. So I think just to reiterate my final encouragement, I think it's brilliant to see the spectrum of work, right from Sporting 87, a serious football club with serious about Christianity, right down to a community outreach, which just takes the fact that people love football all over this country and says, what could we do without incredible resources, without high-level coaching, that will use football in a way that God wants it to be used to enjoy the gift that He's given us, but also to share the gospel and to make connections with the local community.
That's great. And just for your encouragement, please do send any questions through the chat. We've got another 7 minutes or so. I want to respect your time. But the head of the foundation phase again in the FA, which I will bang on about because the FA know their stuff about football. So yeah, it's good to refer to them on occasion. Gareth Southgate wrote the curriculum these days that coaches are taught. So he's not doing too badly, is he? But anyway, until he loses, and then nobody likes him anymore. But no, the curriculum and the stuff that they bring through is very effective. And the head of the foundation phase for under 11s, I met him just in March, actually, Pete Sturgis. And he is dedicated to seeing coaches developed who can properly meet the needs of under 11 age players. And that's from all standards. But he realizes, and what I'm really pleased about is that the FA talk about this all the time, is that you've got to get people playing when they're young. And if you get them playing, they'll stay playing. If you keep it enjoyable, they will keep playing. And not everybody's going to be the most skillful players, but if they're enjoying football, it keeps them active, it keeps them healthy, it keeps their social life alive, and actually it benefits society. They really have that as one of their abiding principles these days. And he's talking about introducing, and he's the head of it, so it was quite nice to have this conversation with him. Examples such as you play, you can teach. It's easier to coach. And so he was going to call it footy, where you have 2v2 or 3v3 with mini goals, and introduce that across the whole of the FA. So all the counties will be recommended to do this for age 7, 8, 9 years old. And then the Playmaker Award in particular is introduced specifically to be able to enable people that don't know so much about football, organise those types of games. And as Andy said, if they're good footballers or they want to get more of a challenge or want to be part of the pyramid system of the FA, then they can join a club that's registered an FA charter standard, like Sporting 87 or other teams. But this ability to be able to reach out to younger kids is an element that I think the church is well placed to do, if only it could realise it. Anyway, I want to bottle you up and take you to a few other meetings, Andy. No, but in what ways have ambassadors been part of this journey with Inspire?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, in many ways, and there's a journey we wouldn't have been able to go on without ambassadors. So right back at the start, to get going, it was ambassadors provided training for volunteers in terms of just getting off the ground. Ambassadors also provide the coaching for the summer holiday clubs, and have done that for the past few years. And that's simply recognising that that's a setting where we're trying to provide something, partly because it's a half day rather than a 1 hour session, but also we probably get a slightly broader. We get a number of kids who are passionate about their football, and so in the season they would be at a kind of City of London academy kind of club, but will come along to the summer holiday club as part of their summer football. They're just looking for football wherever they can find it, and so it's great to have ambassadors on board to provide that higher level of coaching ability, but also to be part of that. But I think again, ambassadors, one thing we've learned from them is that the way that the relationships between a coach and a player, that there's a real richness in the way that the Christian faith can be shared and taught in that context of a meaningful relationship over football.
Yeah, just to encourage you, as we can keep in touch, I hope after this, I'll be sending a little roundup survey to all of you. So thanks for taking part. But partly we are rewriting and editing some of our training materials that we've got in ambassadors, so that our community football outreach training that we deliver, as I was mentioning at the beginning of this hour, can be relevant for churches around the country. But one of the things that feeds into that is something we've developed over the last 12 months or so, Orbit training, which is for volunteers. So if you have volunteers involved in a project, we've developed some materials that can simply communicate and train them in a discipleship manner in some ways for those coaches or assistant coaches to say, how can you be the best football minister you can be? What aspect of football ministry can you improve in? And from week by week, you cover a different topic. Or how do you lead a Bible study? How do you communicate the gospel through a coaching session? And so if you're interested in those, please do get in touch. The poll, because I'd just like to use the technology anyway, is coming right now. So I'm just going to ask you. Some of you maybe know this. We've got, do you know Talk Football? And if you use it as a resource, can you say yes, no, or you don't know about it? Let's see if that works. Nobody's responded yet, but I'm going to keep talking. Whoa, the responses are coming in. It's so exciting. Technology, you got to love it. It's encouraging for those of you who don't know about it. We send it out every Friday about midday. It's topically about something that's in the news about football. And it's written by one of our either staff members or friends of ambassadors about that topic. So are Liverpool the best team in the world? Which is an easy answer for me because I'm a Manchester United fan. That was last week's topic. But then relating it, is it possible to relate that question to faith? You would be surprised, but it is. So they relate it to faith. And it can be used in different contexts. And I know that Jen, that's on the call as well, was saying that they use that in their weekly activities. There was another question from, but thank you for that. 10 people have said yes, they do use Talk Football, 4 no, and 2 didn't know about it. So thanks for taking part. And a question from Jen, actually, I think it was. Oh no, it was John. What days and times do you run your coaching sessions? We'll have another couple of minutes.
Yeah, so we run on a Sunday morning before our church service. So we now have services at 11 and 4. Originally, we only had a 4 p.m. afternoon service, and football was always at 9:30. I think that's worked well for a number of reasons for us. One is it's good for it to be close to church in the week. It helps in terms of connecting people into the life of the church. If it's like, oh, come along afterwards to this service or to this carol service or whatever. Second, my sense is that's the day when no one else is running football, in terms of at least where we are. That's, if we tried to run a weekday evening, there'd be lots of other people running at the same time. And finally, for volunteers, I think volunteers it's helpful because it feels like, I guess going back to what Jonathan was saying, I think I'm very thankful that I'm part of a church, as you can probably guess from my very existence as an employee, who's passionate about reaching out, not just serving the people who are already coming to church. But I think that helps. It doesn't feel, it feels very much like it's part of what you might be doing on a Sunday as part of serving the church. So maybe you're going to do music at the service, or maybe you're going to do football before the service, rather than it feeling separate to kind of that general pattern of volunteering on a Sunday as part of being part of the church family.
That's tremendous. Thank you. And I know of a couple of churches around the country that do that, Sporty Sunday or Sports Sunday School, they've called it, but they've seen what they've seen as well. And I think this is a key element for our football and ministry opportunities as well. Where churches are concerned, there's often a challenge to see men involved in church generally, or even volunteering. And they've seen that men are willing to volunteer if something sporty is happening. Oh, I can help and I can do that. I'm not sure about other things, but I can do that. And they've seen participation, sometimes by unchurched spouses as well, as a mum has been bringing kids to church. They said, oh, there's this football thing going on. Oh, I might be able to help with that. And this aspect that John highlighted as well, where volunteers that don't know so much about church or aren't involved so much with a journey of faith, they feel like they can get involved on a volunteer basis and help out, and that can bring them along on that journey of faith as well.
Massively.
I'm conscious that we're getting close to the end, and there's a question here for Andy. Now, Nelson's just asked a question for Andrew to say, but what's your strategy to get the children involved? The child that just goes every Saturday, or that's what he said.
Sorry, so as in, what's the strategy to get them involved? Is the question about getting them initially involved, or more?
Yes, I think initially involved and then continue.
Yeah, so initial involvement, it's partly word of mouth. So being related to one particular primary school, a few particular estates, we get built relationships with the local estates that they think, well, great, this sounds like a good thing. Let's make sure that people are aware of it, posters up, whatever, and then. And so in some sense, it's not been rocket science in that respect. And then in terms of drawing people on, I think it is all about that relationship. It's about saying, you trust me, you know me, we've been doing this for a year. What do you think about coming along on a Friday night to youth club, or what do you think about coming along as a family to the carol service or whatever? And yeah, I think trying to build relationships with families as well. So recognizing, some kids bring themselves, that's great. We love to chat to them. If there are parents, it's great to have other like particularly if you've got in your setting, you've got any Christian families involved, that's perfect, because then you've got Christian parents who are there because their kids are part of the session, who are able to chat to and get to know the other parents around. So that's always a good, really good step forward.
That's great. I'll leave it open for any more questions from anybody, but I just want to point out at least two things that I've noticed. There are common themes between John and Andy, and in some of the other activities that we've done, is that Andy said this, people are coming along to the activity because it's somewhere where people love them. And I think that's quite profound. And I think that's a real key to our lives as believers and the activities that we do. We're not about activities, we're actually about the culture that we develop and how we can engage with people and create an environment where people feel welcomed. And that impacts people of our faith, of no faith, of other faiths as well. If we can create that environment, then we enable the church to do its job. And that's what Ambassadors believes in, that we are not church. You guys that are out there as well, you're church. We're all called to be members of God's kingdom and be part of church families. But Ambassadors Football is going to help the church to create these environments through a medium that is very popular and just very welcoming. We do produce Talk Football every Friday, and one or two have just texted to say they want to be added to the list. We have got these other training resources that I've mentioned, and I'll be sending out just a little roundup email to let you know where that's going as well. Just in finishing now, I would like to thank you for being part of this last hour. And within Ambassadors, it's something new. We've tried it, and well, I've enjoyed it. Don't know about you guys. Yeah, no, some are smiling. It's a good sign. But we will be doing it again. So in 10 days' time, we're going to have another webinar like this, which is focused on walking football, which is a tremendous way to have an outreach towards the over 55s in particular by the FA, but it's also for any age, but particularly for the for people aged over 55. That's where the Football Association have pitched walking football. But I'm hearing and I know a lot about great successes of walking football being launched. So Mark Blythe, who runs a lot of the activities around the London area to do with walking football through different professional football clubs, and Keith McIntosh, who's involved in Lancashire, running it through his local church, St Andrews Leyland, and Chorley FC, and a few other football clubs around the Lancashire area. They're going to be sharing from their expertise. But yeah, if this has gone well, I think we might be doing this in the future. And we're hoping, along with a small team in Ambassadors that's working on this training program that we're revamping and rewriting, that we might have a more in-depth training time for anybody that wants to attend in the autumn time, thinking about the easing of restrictions, the easing of lockdown, what it really looks like in practice. But football is definitely going to be a part of helping maintain and redevelop again people's mental health, physical health, and social abilities to interact as society. I do love the comments that Andy was saying about reaching out to the 7 to 11-year-olds, and John starts even younger there. You see, with the 3 to 7-year-olds, you bring people in. Denzel Washington, in an interview that I saw just the other day, was saying, with all of the issues to do with gang culture and gun crime and knife crime and all sorts of crime, says you don't see 7-year-olds shooting each other regularly. You don't see little kids being involved in these types of activities. If we can address some of the issues to do with domestic abuse, to do with knife crime, to do with race and other homophobia that can happen in adults, if we can address this with kids, and football can help do this, I believe that we can really reshape and help change society for the better, and that can happen worldwide. But anyway, that sermon's for another day. But I'm very pleased that you could join us. Thank you. And I'll be ending this. This is recorded, and so we'll be putting it onto our YouTube channel that I can send out in the into the email that I send as a follow-up. And also, John's just asked, what's the date for the Walking Football webinar? It's just changed in the last 24 hours, because in 2 weeks' time, I'm now going on holiday, which I'm very pleased about. So it's on Wednesday, the 15th of July at 9 a.m. So Wednesday, the 15th of July at 9 a.m., we're going to have our Walking Football webinar. But thanks for joining. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, John. And it's been great. And yeah, I will say a prayer to finish as I began. Thank you very much. Father God, thank you for the chance to be together. Thank you for the ways in which you can speak to us and through us. Thank you for the variety of ways in which we can reach out through our creative abilities in all sorts of ways, through arts and crafts and drama, and also through sport and football in particular. I pray that you bless and guide us as we go on to the rest of this day and into our communities, taking football and your good news in our hearts. They're the two things that can really make a big impact in society today. Bless us and guide us, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.